A very warm welcome. You're watching CNN News 18 and I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Let's begin with Taiwan's polls. The presidential polls are around the corner. More than 19 million Taiwanese voters will be going into presidential polls on January 13th. It's being touted as an election that is expected to shape cross-strait relations as well as US-China relations. And as expected, how to deal with China remains at the center of every election campaign. And as of now, the presidential election is turning out to be a tight race between the ruling DPP's candidate Lai Ching-te, KMT's Ho Yu-ih and Ko Wen-je from the TPP. Currently, Lai Ching-te from the independence-leaning DPP is ahead in the polls, but no matter who sweeps the upcoming polls, the new president will be at the center of Taiwan's intense conflict with China. The country that has strongly claimed the democratic island of just 24 million people as its territory. And in the past 4 years, China has extensively ramped up military pressure against Taiwan. Its rounds of major military exercises have stoked fears of a war in Taiwan. And as the island is set to elect a new president, Beijing has become more vocal about its own position on Taiwan. China has also urged Taiwan's people to stand on the right side of history. Even Chinese President Xi Jinping reiterated during his New Year address that China's reunification with Taiwan is inevitable no matter what. Now, important to highlight that the three presidential candidates are the DPP's Lai Ching-te, Ho Yu-ih from the Kuomintang Party and Ko Wen-je from Taiwan People's Party. Let's also bring you a report that will break down for you what each candidate is fighting for in this election.
Taiwan's sovereignty and independence belong to its people. That's what the presidential frontrunner said on Saturday in a debate with the other two candidates. The televised debate was dominated by arguments over China and tensions in the Taiwan Strait. Vice President Lai Ching-te, the ruling Democratic Progressive Party's presidential candidate, reiterated that he was open to talks with China. He added that Taiwan and China are not subordinate to each other. China has repeatedly rebuffed his offers of dialogue as it believes he is a dangerous separatist. Taiwan's presidential and parliamentary elections are happening on January 13th, as China has stepped up military and political pressure to assert its claims of sovereignty over the island. Chinese warplanes have been sent regularly into the strait. Lai has generally been leading opinion polls by around 5 points, but some have put his main challenger, Ho Yu-ih of Taiwan's largest opposition party, the Kuomintang, much closer behind. Ho accused Lai of smearing him with accusations of being pro-China. Ho said he opposed Taiwan's independence and China's one country, two systems model of autonomy that no mainstream party supports. He added that to maintain close ties with the United States while also making peace with China is the solution to the problem. The third presidential candidate is former Taipei Mayor Ko Wen-je from the small Taiwan People's Party. He said his bottom line on engaging with China was the protection of Taiwan's current political system and way of life. China has described the election as a choice between war and peace.
As a choice between war and peace, well, that's what China has to say about the upcoming Taiwan election. But let's try and get in a perspective in terms of what this means for Taiwan and the larger international community. And for that, let me introduce my guests today. I'm joined in by Dr. Roger Liu, who's an associate professor at the Flame University. Also joined in by Bishop Garrison, who's a senior fellow at the National Security Institute at George Mason University's Law School. Many thanks to you, gentlemen, for joining in. Dr. Roger, if I may begin with you, would you agree that this presidential poll is going to be Taiwan's most consequential election?
Well, this is actually not the first time. If you remember, in 1996, actually, this is the first time that the Chinese government and the CCP had tried to influence the result of the Taiwanese election, while the pro-independence, as they claim, the KMT candidate Li Denghui was running for the president. Actually, China wanted to stop him from being elected. So they staged a large-scale military exercise near the Taiwan Strait by blockading Taiwan de facto. But the final result actually is the Taiwanese people chose the person they didn't want. So China has been learning to act in a smart way in recent years, and they have been trying to keep strategic pressures around the Taiwan Strait, as most of the people have been seeing. But this time, I think there's a close call between the number one and number two. So the Taiwanese people actually are talking about this recently. So I think it's going to be a tense election, but people will have learned to keep calm and keep their daily life going on.
Bishop, if I could bring you in on this, whether you call it status quo, many foreign policy experts have also called it limbo as far as Taiwan is concerned, whether it is reunification with China or its own formal independence, that has not been achieved as yet. Do you think that this election is now bound to impact the existing sort of status quo, if you may choose to say it?
Yeah, thank you for having me. That's a lingering question that we're going to see play out here in the coming days and weeks. I think the big thing here is Dr. Liu recently said was, really China is going to continue to push this theme of reunification and say that, Taiwan should already be a part of the People's Republic, and it needs to be. It doesn't deserve or shouldn't have its own independence. And the status quo here is a very important thing. We've continuously seen Chinese disinformation and Chinese efforts to influence democracies across the globe in recent months and years. And this is a particular stark fact for them right now, given their relationship with Taiwan, the U.S. relationship with Taiwan, and what we're seeing happening more globally. The U.S. has some of its interest and its efforts spread out a little bit with the continued invasion of Ukraine by Russia and a lot of the other both kinetic and diplomatic activities that we're seeing the U.S. Is currently engaged in. So this is just one more piece for us, but for China, this could be an opportunity for them to make a more drastic move to have lasting impact. I think what we're going to see is that the status quo will continue. I believe that Taiwan will continue to appreciate and enjoy the long-standing democracy that it has had, but I do think that we shouldn't take this situation for granted, and that the U.S. is going to need to work with its allies to keep China as a rational actor.
That's a very interesting point that you have made, Bishop. I'm going to, in fact, delve deeper into it. But for now, I'm going to request you and Dr. Liu to stay on with me, because I also want to play out what President Xi of China had to say when it comes regarding reunification with China as far as Taiwan is concerned. He's saying that that is inevitable. And he made this point at a very crucial juncture, that too in a speech on New Year's. We have a lot to play out as far as China's role in this entire election is concerned. Stay tuned and let me play out that report for you.
President Xi Jinping says China's reunification with Taiwan is inevitable. Xi's comments, made during his New Year's Eve address, come just days before the South Rhode Island heads to the polls to elect a new leader. In his speech, Xi said that compatriots on both sides of the Taiwan Strait must share in the glory of national rejuvenation. China has been ramping up military pressure to assert its sovereignty claims over Taiwan, which on January the 13th holds presidential and parliamentary elections. Taiwan's leader has been quick to respond to Xi's comments. President Tsai Ing-wen said that the island's relations with China must be decided by the will of the people, and peace must be based on dignity. China has cast the election as a choice between war and peace, and has refused multiple offers of talks by Tsai, while Taiwan's government has repeatedly warned China is trying to interfere in the vote, whether by using fake news or military or trade pressure. Beijing has taken particular exception to current Vice President Lai Ching-te, who is leading in opinion polls, saying he is a dangerous separatist.
And that's not all. In an exclusive interview to CNN News 18, Taiwan's foreign minister has revealed that they have credible evidence to back reports of China's alleged election interference. He said that he will also be providing documented evidence once the election is over, perhaps even address a press conference. Listen in to this exclusive conversation he had with CNN News 18's managing editor, Zahar Khachik.
Yeah, there will be 40 elections, including India. Yeah, that's right. And we are looking at the Chinese election interference very closely. If they are successful in interfering in our election, I'm sure they're going to apply the same tactics against other countries, against other democracies. And next week, I will, hold a international press briefings to document China's election interference, so that the international community know what China is about to our democratic elections. And that is something that you probably want to keep an eye on too.
All right, let me quickly go back to Dr. Roger Liu, who continues to stay with me. So does Bishop. Dr. Liu, if you heard what Taiwan's foreign minister has just said, he's saying that they have documented evidence. What are the tactics that China is now resorting to? I know reports are indicating that there's a specific planned disinformation campaign being run by China. At the same time, there's also a report that's suggesting that they're also using hybrid warfare, which includes cyber attacks. How can the international community take note of this and arrest the situation?
Because what China has been using is called the gray zone operations. So this is usually called sharp power between the hard power and the soft power. What they're using actually is to use the social media portals or other internet forums to spread the news or to create some disinformation to the target audience of theirs. For example, there are some collaborators here in Taiwan, or there are some supporters of the national unification of Taiwan with China. So China is trying to mobilize these people and trying to create a force which is favorable to them and persuade them to vote for the KMT or the pro-unification candidates. So this is what they're using. And one of the things that the Minister of Foreign Affairs has also indicated actually has been busted by the prosecutors recently. We found more and more cases like that. China would invite the local political leaders. These people are just like the sarpanch of the panchaya in India. So it's the most basic local leaders, the officials. They invite them to go to China and give them a very nice treat and persuade them, tell them that to tell their people to support the candidate that China wants. So this is also part of that. They have been using against Taiwan. So we have been paying attention to that as well.
Bishop, I'd like you to weigh in on what Dr. Liu had to say. He's made some very valid and pertinent points, because let's also not forget what the foreign minister had to warn. He said that if China is allowed to shape Taiwan's election outcome, tomorrow they could be doing that to any democracy only to promote their preferred international world order.
Absolutely, and in some part, just to provide an opportunity to create chaos against their enemies in the Western world. A big part here is that this could be used as a testing bed. You could see a Chinese influence and disinformation campaign that's leveraged against these Taiwanese elections that is then improved upon and used against the United States, for instance, during our elections later this year. So I think that's an incredibly important point. So you're going to see China looking at opportunities to leverage this gray zone or this hybrid warfare system that allows them to interfere not just in Taiwan, but in other elections abroad. And you're going to see that whether it's in South America, whether it's in European countries, throughout. And the big tool that they're going to continue to leverage until we have better regulations across the board on is social media. They see how low cost and how highly impactful these types of techniques can be, and they're going to continue to leverage them.
All right, Dr. Liu, now let's also talk about the impact of the semiconductor industry on the election in Taiwan. With TSMC planning 2 fabrication plants running in Arizona by the year 2026, how much of a role has the chip maker and the global semiconductor industry had on this election?
Well, I will say that these are the parallel lines. Of course, people are talking about silicon shield, how semiconductor is going to protect Taiwan's Taiwan's democracy. But well, these are businessmen, and what the government of Taiwan has been thinking is more than that. They are thinking about the industrial policy as well. Of course, the U.S. would like Taiwan to share its experience in the mature procedures of in the manufacturing procedure of semiconductor. So that's why TSMC was asked to set up at least 2 foundries in Arizona. But there are actual difficulties because, well, the labor culture and attitude, the working culture and ethics actually make it very difficult for the U.S. workers to accustom themselves to the working rhythms in the TSMC. So I think this will continue to happen because not only the U.S., Japan also asked Taiwan to set up different foundries in Japan as well as Germany. So I think this is the part that Taiwan would like to share with the rest of the world, not only its democratic practice, but also its know-hows in the manufacturing of semiconductors.
Fair enough. Bishop, we've seen in most elections the industrial policies of every nation have a huge role to play. And that's why I want to point out how several KMT politicians are blaming the DPP for elevated tensions with China. They're also accusing them of hollowing out of Taiwan. They're saying that, the DPP will only see that Taiwan sold off to the United States. Could such a rhetoric impact the Taiwanese voters?
Well, I mean, ultimately, look, you're talking about, to some degree, supply chain logistics and supply chain security. We know how important, as Dr. Liu just laid out, how important these technologies are, how important the continued manufacturing of these types of chips remain. Here in the United States, we went as far as to begin improving our own infrastructure and our ability to manufacture our own technologies here. We know how important these technologies are to China and their ability to control them and their ability to control the overall supply chain for a lot of these technologies that are used that have national security impacts across the board. So for us, to some degree, we want to see Taiwan remain a very strong democracy because they have been a very important ally of ours, and we've appreciated everything they've done from a technological perspective. We're also looking to increase our own ability to continue to invest in these types of technology here in the United States so we can ensure that there will be no malign Chinese or other foreign influence in a lot of what we do, because these technologies are so important to our day-to-day lives as well as our own national security.
All right. May the best man win is what I'd like to say as I end this conversation. Many thanks to you, Dr. Liu and Bishop, for joining in with your precious insights. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. And with that, let me also end with a report that tells you about what the Taiwanese voters are actually seeking for as they choose between these 3 candidates. Have a look, and thank you so much for watching.
As Taiwan prepares to vote in the presidential and parliamentary elections next month, polls reveal deep divisions between generations towards its relationship with China. At this government-run veterans' care home in northern Taiwan, this former soldier's chest tattoo of the island's flag carries the complexities of those ties. Wang Zhiquan, who is 93, joined the Chinese army when he was only 13 and holds tragic memories of war.
I still dare not watch the news when I watch TV. War is cruel and cold. When I started serving as a soldier, people were forced to enlist during the civil war between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party. When they couldn't catch adults, they would catch children.
Defeated in the Chinese Civil War, the nationalist Kuomintang government fled to Taiwan 7 decades ago, but no peace treaty was ever signed to end the war. China's communist government has since been pushing for what it calls reunification with Taiwan and has ramped up its military pressure against the island in the past few years, stoking fears of a war that could drag in the United States. Those tensions are dominating election campaigns in the run-up to Taiwan's January 13th ballot. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party champions the island's separate identity from China. But despite moving to Taiwan and later fighting for its island of Kinmen, Wang's sense of identity remains tied to China.
Taiwan is a part of China. It has been since the Qing and Ming dynasties.
It's a view shared by many from his generation, like fellow care home resident Sun Guoxi. The 110-year-old veteran believes his current government is being provocative. He warns that if a conflict breaks out, the island would be no match for China. Yet their views conflict with mainstream Taiwan, who overwhelmingly view themselves as Taiwanese and not Chinese, according to polls.